Hi, this is David Odell with OdellCompleteConcrete. This is part 2 of a 4-part series. The first part we met with the homeowner, and now we're going to show how we're going to get to that point, to the end. Right now we're starting with the underground. Right here we're going to be digging in the drain lines. Also some of these trenches we may utilize for sprinkler lines and future sleeves. So I'm going to drain half of this property around one side of the house. The other half of this property is going to come around the other side of the house. So we'll have two holes through the curb face into the street, one on each side of the driveway. So as we cut through this trench, we found some PVC. We broke a few of the existing irrigation. We had to repair them. Inevitably it's going to get all new irrigation lines under here, but in the meantime, for this particular job, this is phase 1, we're going to utilize the existing system just to get them through for another year or two, so we can budget for the next project, which is an entirely new sprinkler system. Now down the side of this house here, we're going to have a walkway. There's the electrical that I was talking about in part 1 a little bit. That's a pole box, underground electric. No overhead in this neighborhood. Now there's a 3-inch core through the 6-inch curb face. So 3 inches is really ideal. Any bigger than that, you don't have much concrete left on a curb. Here's the other side of the driveway. And these run all the way to the backyard. You can see all those orange flags that I talked about in the first part. Those are your underground utilities that have been marked by Dig Alert. And it's fairly self-explanatory where they would be, just with knowing where the meters are, the gas meters, electrical meters. Not too difficult to figure out within a foot or two, but this gives you exactly where they are underground. Doesn't really give me the depth, but the location. So here's where all the sprinkler valves are. They're right behind that gas meter. There's 4 of them. The water feed, or the supply line for those valves, come across the driveway at some point, and they're fed with a 1-inch. And outgoing to all the sprinkler itself is 3/4 inch. Right in this area here, we're going to put a T in an upright area drain. The reason for that is because we're going to put artificial turf in this particular location. It's a small patch of about 20 by 15 of artificial turf right there. And any water that gets underneath that turf will find its way into that area drain that we located there. Now this is the side yard. And these uprights are just cut at a random height right at this point. We just make them a little long, and then we're going to cut those to the correct height after the forms are put in for the concrete. Now those will actually be in the planter bed. So the walkway will just slope away from the house into the planter bed, into those atrium drain caps that are in the planter area. All along this property line wall is a planter bed, so all these area drains will be in the planter itself. Now here's some broken lines here that we hit. And this is right off the valves on the side yard. So basically, we're just going to run new underneath the concrete. We're not going to try to salvage the old pipes underneath the concrete. So we're going to run new all the way. Then also we're going to throw in one extra that goes all the way from the backyard to the front yard. And that'll be for future new irrigation line when the valves get moved to the other side of the house. So here's where we're utilizing the same trench for the water lines. 2 sprinkler lines and 1 future. There's your future right there that's going to pop out beyond the sidewalk that we're going to be installing. They had sprinklers all along this side yard at one point, and a lot of bushes and overgrowth. Well, that was all gone before I got here. All I had to deal with was a lot of sprinkler heads that were going to be abandoned. Rather than capping them, we just ran new lines all the way. Now what we're doing here is I'm painting the shape of the artificial turf. This was the initial plan right here, the way I had it painted out, but we ended up doing it curved after we did that initial paint out. Now we have area drains all the way down this side yard, and they're approximately 10 feet apart, which is the length of a pipe. So rather than joining pipes and cutting them, you just throw a T at every joint. We have a lot of slope out of this backyard to the front. For one reason, we're kind of on a hillside, and the backyard's a lot higher than it is at the street. So a lot of this walkway has about 6 inches of slope from the back to the front. We do have area drains to catch a lot of the runoff, but inevitably it's going to all hit the street one way or the other. Now in the back of the house, we're going to start at about a ½ inch below the weepscrete. Then in the front, we're approximately 6 inches below. So that's how we know. Well, that's one reason that you'll know how much slope you have, assuming the weepscrete's level. And that depending on the house foundation is level, which in most cases it usually is. Now that property line wall there should be level as well, so that's another good reference point on how much slope you may have if you measure down from your grout lines. You have to verify that that wall's level to be able to use that as a reference point. And then the way you can verify if your wall is level is by using a laser level. You can use a 4-foot level also, but you're only catching, so many feet at a time. So it's best to shoot from one end to the other with a laser level, and then you know if the wall is really correct. In this case it was, so I utilized just measuring down from the grout line to get my elevations all the way through here. There's a sprinkler line that ran along the side of the house there as well. We had 3 heads we had to cap. That'll all be abandoned in the near future when the new system comes in. That line right there is for future low voltage potentially, or another water outlet in the rear of the yard. You can see the hose bib coming out of the side of the house. That can be attached and then continued underneath the artificial turf that's already in place. Now we're painting out the sidewalk. We're doing about a 4-foot wide sidewalk, and we use the radius point at the corner where the porch meets the house. That was our radius point for both sides of the walkway. The walkway in the front of the house that you can see right there, that's going to be coming out, and then we're going to go all the way over to the house, or it's actually the garage at that point. Now right here what we're doing is we're painting out the new retaining concrete curb, and so it's gonna be a two-tiered level landscaping design here. We have the upper curb, and then we have a lower curb, so we have a step down to this next elevation. When the step down kind of comes down to about the level of the city sidewalk, rather than having a sloped landscape area, you can actually keep it flat this way with a couple steps in it. Now we're going to start digging in where the curb's going to get set. So it's going to be an 8-inch wide concrete curb. I'm going to put 2 pieces of rebar in it, one at top and bottom. They're going to be number 3, and I'm going to have to bend them in the shape of this curb because it's all curved radius stuff. The real trick is picking the right material to form something like this. Plywood will do the trick. In this case I use masonite, and a 1/4-inch masonite is not very strong by itself, so I actually doubled it up, and it seemed to get the job done. You'll see that too as we pour. That's in part 4, I believe, or 3. Now this sidewalk's coming out real easy, as you can see. You just pry it up with a pry bar, hit it with a 20-pound sledge, and it crumbles. Now if they had wire mesh or rebar or something like that in there, we would probably spend a little bit more time trying to remove this. Now we're going to start getting ready to pull a string line down this side so we can set some 2x4s. So we have an existing elevation, which is the brick landing outside that slider door. We have to match that, and we're going to want about 1%, 1.5% slope away from the house. And that's approximately 3/16 of an inch per foot, maybe 1/8 inch per foot. Depends on your grade, what you have going on around you, and then you can kind of make it work. But you really don't want to go over 2%. And that's a 1/4 inch per foot. Now here's the masonite. I'm going to start ripping this down. I'm going to rip it to a 12-inch width, because even though I'm really only going to be about 8 inches above grade, I'm going to still be a good 6 or so below grade. So we need a good 12-inch piece of form lumber here to retain some of the concrete so it doesn't blow out and mushroom out the bottom. There's nothing worse than try to put plants in against a wall or something with a big foundation in the way at the bottom. Things just don't grow on top of concrete. So we're going to try to keep this footing going straight down. So you can see we're putting some more sleeves because the new sprinkler valves are going to go on the front of the house eventually off of the main. That's why we put all those sleeves in right there across that new sidewalk area. Now on that masonite, what I did, I just ripped it. I put 2 together and I half overlapped each piece of masonite on the seams, because they're only 8 feet because they're 8x4 sheets. So you half overlap, you end up with a double thickness. So we got 1/2 inch of material there. They're 1/4 inch thick masonite. And it leaves a really nice smooth surface as well when you're using masonite. When you strip it, it's really smooth. So that means you don't have to do a lot of hand floating. You can normally just touch it with a trowel and you're ready to either leave it smooth or put a broom finish or poke some holes in it, make a salt finish, stamp it, whatever. Lots of choices at that point. You could hit it with some retardant and then spray it, wash it, and get a sand wash. But in this case, we're just going to pour it and trowel it and broom it. So we started with that inside form first. We got that relatively level, and I used my 6-foot Milwaukee red stick to jump across these radius points. And then I nailed every other stake in the back, so that keeps it level. And I'm just using some 6 duplexes, so they're protruding to the inside. Bend those over because it'll want to slide off those nails if you don't bend it over, so that'll hold it up tight against that stake. And then once you get your inside form, you can throw some spreaders in there, 6-inch, or well, actually I use 8-inch spreaders because I want an 8-inch curb here. Threw some 8-inch spreaders in, use steel stakes, and the steel stakes are straight across from each other so I could put some tie wire on it. And that holds it together, so when the concrete goes into that form, it doesn't blow the forms out. As the concrete goes in, the spreaders come right out because the pressure of the concrete makes it loosens it up a little bit, so the spreaders will just basically fall out, and you just grab them, throw them to the side. So what I try to do here is I keep the tie wire up high on the stakes so we can actually get an edger underneath without having to remove the wire prematurely. Because you remove that wire prematurely, you're going to blow the curb out. Now here we are in the side yard, putting some expansion foam in. Now this has a tearaway on top. Although we're not going to tear anything away on this and we're not going to caulk it, we're just going to leave the foam in there. But you have that option of removing the top 1/2 inch and putting some caulking in there. If you didn't want water to go into that gap and you want to keep it sealed, that's what you would do. I don't mind if water goes in there because it actually helps for drainage. Now back to the front here. We're getting the shape on this. We painted it out initially, and then we cut the dirt right where we wanted it to. And now it's all about just measuring the width and maintaining that 4 feet. I used my 4-foot level for the spacing to drive the stakes in. See, there it is right there, the 4-foot woody. There's my spacing, and then the 6-foot on top to get my cross slope. Real simple. You can see they've got a galvanized dropping down for that supply line to the other side of the driveway. That's going to rust out eventually. It's going to blow. But right below that is all PVC, fortunately, so you'd probably have like maybe a 12-inch Galvy stem that might give, and then you just replace it. Now here's the number 3 rebar going in. We just kind of bent to the shape. A few crossers in there, although the crossers aren't really necessary. It's never going to crack the long ways. It's only going to crack the short distance. Well, here's your complete setup. And those stakes are fairly close together. They're about 1 foot apart, my stake spacing. And that's what you need when you're pouring 12-inch curb, 8 inches wide. A lot of pressure on that, especially for masonite. There are no nails on those seams. I just used some duct tape. Real simple and easy that way. I got a area drain just on the inside top edge of that retainer, just to catch any excess water at the top. There's an irrigation line that goes underneath that bottom curb. Now, even though that's set high, we'll roll it down to the driveway to prevent like a trip hazard or something. Here's all the rebar on both sides of the house. We've cut all of our drains to elevation. We've got the drain caps in. We glued that foam, expansion foam, to the wall. The nice thing about the expansion foam in these little tight areas like this, where it's wedged in between the house and two fixed objects, is that you have a good reference point when you're rodding the concrete. Like a chalk line sometimes can get buried with concrete and you don't know where you're at. With the foam right there that's glued on, gives you a really good hardcore reference point that you can always maintain when you're pouring. Here's a couple snacks the homeowner brought out. Anyway, thanks for watching. This was part 2 of a 3-part series. The next one should be the concrete pour, and then we're going to have also on the 4th and final the artificial turf install. Thanks for watching. If you like them, subscribe. That way you won't miss a thing. Hit the bell, and you'll be notified when we upload part 3 or 4. Have a good one.